The sky above the alien planet was a strange hue of purple and gold, and the forest beneath was filled with towering, bioluminescent trees that hummed quietly in the wind. Commander Ray Carter's ship had been hit during a routine patrol in the far reaches of the galaxy, forcing him to make a crash landing. His pod lay smoldering behind him, pieces scattered across the forest floor. He groaned as he pushed himself up, his body itching from the impact. This planet isn't on any map, Ray thought as he surveyed the unfamiliar surroundings. His wrist communicator sparked, its signal dead, just like the last of his hope for a quick rescue. But survival instincts kicked in, and he began to search for shelter. As night fell, strange creatures stirred in the shadows, glowing plants casting an eerie light. Ray quickly fashioned a small hideout, his heart racing as unfamiliar sounds echoed through the trees. Suddenly, the underbrush rustled. Ray froze, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. 3 alien figures stepped into view. They were tall, slender, with shimmering silver skin that reflected the moonlight. Their large, almond-shaped eyes locked onto him, each filled with curiosity and something more. Ray knew immediately these weren't just curious inhabitants. These were Nerians, a species known throughout the galaxy for their intelligence and strange customs. And these females had found him at the worst possible time. Mating season. This is just great, Ray muttered, tightening his grip on his weapon as the 3 alien girls began to approach, their melodic voices cutting through the stillness of the night. Ray's pulse quickened as the 3 Nerian females moved closer, their graceful, almost predatory strides cutting through the tension of the night. Their skin shimmered in the dim moonlight, reflecting shades of violet and silver with every step. Each one had distinct features, yet they shared a similar air of curiosity mixed with determination, an intensity that made Ray uneasy. He glanced around for an escape route, but the dense alien forest offered little cover. There was nowhere to run. He clenched his jaw, knowing he had to face them. Maybe they'll lose interest if I stay calm, Ray thought, but deep down he knew better. Nerians were known for their persistence, especially during their mating season. Stories of male soldiers caught in the frenzy of these alien customs had become almost legendary back on his home planet. Some were funny, others far darker. As they approached, one of the Nerians, slightly taller than the others, stepped forward. Her eyes were locked onto Ray's, and she emitted a soft, melodic hum. It wasn't threatening, but it was impossible to ignore. Ray swallowed hard, unsure of how to react. His training had prepared him for combat, for survival in hostile environments. But not for this. What do you want? Ray asked cautiously, his voice steady despite the rising anxiety. The lead Nerian tilted her head, as if pondering his words, though it was clear she didn't understand his language. Instead, she raised her hand, motioning to the other 2, who began circling him slowly. Ray's heart pounded in his chest as he realized they were studying him, examining him even. This isn't good. Suddenly, one of the other Nerians made a swift movement towards him, her hand reaching out. Ray reflexively stepped back, drawing his combat knife from its sheath. The alien girl froze for a moment, her wide eyes flicking to the blade before a soft hiss escaped her lips. Ray held his ground, gripping the knife tightly, but the tension in the air grew thicker. He knew he couldn't fight them all off. He had to find another way to survive this encounter. His mind raced as he tried to recall everything he knew about Nerian customs. They respect intelligence. Maybe that's my way out. Lowering the knife slightly, Ray made a deliberate effort to show he wasn't a threat. He pointed to his ship's wreckage behind him, hoping to convey that he needed help, not a fight. The lead Nerian's eyes followed his gesture, and for a moment, the humming stopped. Then, to Ray's surprise, the lead Nerian stepped closer again, this time with a much softer expression. Her hand reached out, not in aggression, but in curiosity. Ray's muscles tensed, but he didn't move. The moment felt delicate, One wrong step could turn the situation dangerous. As her fingers hovered near his arm, Ray made a decision. He slowly extended his hand towards her, hoping this gesture of mutual curiosity would diffuse the tension. Their fingertips barely brushed when the loud, guttural growl ripped through the night. The alien girls whipped their heads around, their melodic tones shifting into something much sharper. Ray's heart skipped a beat as he realized whatever was out there, it wasn't friendly. Suddenly, the Nerians weren't focused on him anymore. They were looking past him, into the darkness of the forest, and their glowing eyes reflected a new urgency. Without warning, the lead Nerian grabbed Ray's arm and pulled him toward the cover of the trees. The other two followed, their movements swift and deliberate. Ray's mind spun, but he didn't resist. Whatever was coming, it was far more dangerous than the Nerians themselves. Ray stumbled through the dense underbrush, his mind racing to catch up with what was happening. The three Nerians moved quickly, their lithe forms weaving effortlessly through the thick foliage. The alien who had grabbed his arm still held on tightly, her grip firm but not painful. He could hear the creature that had growled moments earlier. It was closing in fast. Whatever it is, it's big, Ray thought as he was pulled deeper into the forest. He risked a glance over his shoulder, but all he could see were shifting shadows. The growling had turned into a low, rhythmic thud, footsteps, heavy ones, pounding against the alien soil. Ray's mind snapped into survival mode. Focus, he told himself. One problem at a time. He had no idea what the creature behind them was. But if the Nerians were running, it meant one thing. They were outmatched. The group finally reached a clearing, and the lead Nerian let go of Ray's arm, turning to face him. Her wide, reflective eyes locked onto his, and she gestured sharply to a nearby cluster of massive tree roots. It was clear she wanted him to hide. Ray hesitated, glancing back at the advancing threat. He didn't like hiding while the Nerians stayed out in the open. Before he could argue, the other two alien girls had already taken positions around the perimeter of the clearing, their eyes scanning the trees, their stances ready for a fight. It was then Ray realized these Nerians weren't running from the threat. They were preparing to face it head-on. They're warriors, Ray realized, his respect for them growing. But that didn't mean he was going to hide and let them deal with this alone. Ray shook his head, quickly signaling to the lead Nerian that he wouldn't hide. She stared at him, her brow furrowed, clearly frustrated by his refusal. But there wasn't time for debate. The creature was nearly upon them. The trees shook violently, and from the shadows emerged a hulking beast, at least 10 feet tall, with thick, black scales covering its body. Its eyes glowed a deep red, and its gaping mouth revealed rows of sharp, jagged teeth. Ray instinctively raised his knife, knowing it wouldn't do much against a creature of this size. The lead Nerian let out a sharp, melodic cry, an order to her companions. Without hesitation, the two other alien girls darted toward the beast, moving with a speed that left Ray momentarily stunned. They leaped and weaved, their bodies shimmering as they attempted to confuse the creature. But the beast was fast, its massive claws swiping through the air, narrowly missing one of the Nerians. Ray knew he had to act. His combat training had drilled into him the importance of quick thinking and teamwork, even in the most alien of circumstances. He quickly scanned the clearing, looking for anything he could use to his advantage. That's when he saw it. A large rock perched precariously on the edge of a nearby ridge. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. If he could dislodge it, he might be able to buy them some time or at least throw the creature off balance. Ray sprinted toward the ridge, keeping low to avoid drawing the beast's attention. The Nerians continued to engage the creature, their movements coordinated and precise. Ray reached the rock and began to push with all his strength. It was heavier than he expected, but the adrenaline surging through his veins gave him the power he needed. With a final grunt, Ray hived the rock over the edge. It tumbled down the slope, picking up speed before slamming into the side of the creature with a deafening crash. The impact wasn't enough to kill the beast, but it was enough to knock it off balance, sending it staggering sideways. The Narians seized the opportunity. The lead alien girl lunged forward, producing a glowing, crystalline blade from her belt. She leaped onto the creature's back and drove the blade into the base of its neck. The beast let out a bone-rattling roar before collapsing to the ground, its massive body shaking the earth as it fell. Ray stood frozen for a moment, breathing heavily as he watched the Narian circle the fallen creature. The lead Narian retrieved her blade, her expression calm, though her chest rose and fell rapidly from exertion. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, the lead Narian turned to Ray and offered a small nod of acknowledgement. It wasn't a smile, but it was close enough. Ray exhaled, his muscles finally relaxing. He had survived, again, but something had shifted. He wasn't just a stranger on this planet anymore. He had proven himself in the eyes of the Narians, and they had proven themselves to him. As the dust settled and the massive beast lay lifeless on the forest floor, Ray leaned against a nearby tree, trying to steady his breathing. The Narians, still graceful even after such a fierce battle, gathered around the creature, inspecting their work. Ray noticed that their focus wasn't just on the beast's body. They were scanning the surrounding area, their senses on high alert. The lead Narian, the one who had pulled him to safety, approached him once more. She still hadn't spoken a word that Ray could understand, but her eyes told him enough. There was an unspoken acknowledgement now, a subtle recognition of his worth as an ally, not just a potential threat or curiosity. She reached into a small pouch at her waist and retrieved a glowing crystal, holding it out to him. Ray hesitated for a moment before accepting it, feeling the warmth radiating from the smooth surface. He didn't know what it was, but from the way she offered it, he guessed it had significance. Is this a gift? A sign of trust? Ray wondered, turning the crystal in his hands. The Narian gestured to it, and then pointed toward his wrecked pod in the distance. Ray furrowed his brow in confusion, but then it clicked. The crystal, it might be able to help power the communicator. He looked up at her, eyes wide with realization. She nodded slowly, confirming his unspoken question. Ray's heart raced with renewed hope. If he could get the communicator working again, he might have a chance to call for backup, or at least send a distress signal. This alien alliance was turning out to be far more valuable than he had anticipated. But before he could thank her, or at least attempt to, there was movement in the trees again. Ray tensed, fearing another attack, but the Narians remained calm. Out of the shadows emerged two more figures, slender, shimmering like the three girls he had encountered. These new arrivals were male, judging by their broader frames and slightly different features. The lead Narian gestured toward the newcomers, and they approached Ray cautiously, exchanging brief glances with the females. The males seemed to acknowledge Ray with the same respect, but there was also an underlying tension in the air. Ray wasn't sure what to make of it, but he got the sense that his presence here wasn't just a simple matter of being a stranded soldier. There was more at play. One of the new arrivals produced a holographic device and displayed a three-dimensional map of the planet's surface. Ray peered at it, recognizing the general layout of the terrain around them. But there was one area on the map, glowing brightly, that drew his attention. What is that? Ray wondered. The lead Narian pointed to the glowing area, and then back to Ray, her expression serious. He could tell that they wanted to take him somewhere, and from the look in their eyes, it wasn't just for a casual stroll. Something important awaited there. Ray felt a growing sense of urgency. Whatever this location was, it was vital to the Narians, and they believed it was important to him too. Perhaps it held the key to his survival, or something far greater. Without much choice, Ray nodded in agreement, signaling that he would follow. The Narians seemed satisfied, and the group began to move swiftly through the dense forest once again, the males now leading the way. As they traveled, Ray's mind raced. What had started as a fight for survival had evolved into something far more complex. He wasn't just a soldier stranded on an alien world anymore. He was part of something much bigger, something he didn't yet fully understand. But one thing was certain: the Nerians needed him just as much as he needed them. The group moved quickly and silently through the alien forest, the dense foliage giving way to rougher, more mountainous terrain. Ray could feel the tension building with every step. The Nerians led him with purpose, their attention fully focused on the path ahead. Whatever this nexus was, it held immense significance to them, and potentially to his own survival. As they ascended a steep hill, Ray took a moment to glance back at the shimmering horizon. His wrecked escape pod was no longer visible, swallowed by the dense jungle below. It was strange how, just a few hours ago, his only concern had been finding a way off this planet. Now, he was wrapped up in something far more mysterious, an alien mission he barely understood, yet one he was now a part of. The lead Nerian, the one who had offered him the glowing crystal, turned to check on him. Her eyes reflected the soft glow of the approaching evening, but they also held something deeper. Though they couldn't communicate through words, Ray could feel a connection building between them, a growing trust. She nodded once, acknowledging his perseverance before turning back to the path. The terrain became increasingly treacherous, with jagged rocks and narrow pathways winding through the mountainside. The two male Nerians led the way, their movements agile and precise, as though they had traveled this path many times before. The other two females stayed close to Ray, subtly ensuring that he kept pace. As they crested the final ridge, Ray's breath caught in his throat. Before them, nestled between two towering peaks, was an ancient structure, the Nexus. It was unlike anything Ray had ever seen, a massive temple-like edifice, made of dark, polished stone that glimmered in the fading light. Strange, geometric symbols were etched into its surface, pulsing faintly with energy. This is what they'd been protecting, Ray realized. The sheer size of the structure, combined with the eerie glow emanating from it, told him that this was no ordinary building. It was ancient, powerful, perhaps even sacred. The Nerians approached the entrance cautiously, their movements reverent. Ray followed, his senses on high alert. As they neared the doors, they stopped, and the lead Nerian stepped forward, turning to Ray with a serious expression. She pointed to the glowing crystal he still held in his hand. Ray looked down at it, the warm light pulsating gently. He understood now. This crystal was the key to whatever lay within the Nexus. The Nerians had brought him here for a reason, but it was up to him to unlock the next step in their journey. Ray approached the towering doors of the Nexus. They loomed above him, etched with ancient runes that seemed to shimmer and shift in the light. As he lifted the crystal, it began to glow more brightly, resonating with the symbols on the door. Slowly, a low hum filled the air, and the ground beneath him vibrated. With a deep breath, Ray pressed the crystal into a small recess in the door. The moment it touched the surface, the crystal flared to life, its light merging with the runes. The ancient symbols glowed brighter, spreading across the entire structure like veins of molten energy. Then, with a deep, echoing groan, the doors began to open. Ray stepped back, watching in awe as the entrance to the Nexus slowly revealed itself. Inside was a vast chamber, bathed in a strange, ethereal light. The air was cool, almost chilling, and the sound of distant, rhythmic humming filled the space. The Nerians stood beside him, their expressions unreadable, but there was a palpable sense of anticipation. Whatever was inside, it had the power to change everything. Without a word, the lead Nerian motioned for Ray to follow, and together they stepped into the Nexus. As they moved deeper into the chamber, Ray couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far beyond his understanding, a force older than anything he had encountered before. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with more of the glowing symbols, and at the center stood a massive pedestal. On it rested a large, pulsating sphere of energy, surrounded by intricate mechanisms that seemed to hum in sync with the sphere's rhythm. Ray approached cautiously, drawn to the energy emanating from the sphere. The lead Nerian stepped beside him, her eyes focused intently on the object. She gestured toward it, then to Ray, making it clear that this was what he had been brought here for. "What is this?" Ray wondered, but before he could ask, the sphere flared brighter, casting the chamber in a blinding light. Suddenly, images began to flood Ray's mind, visions of planets, stars, alien civilizations, and humanity's place among them. It was overwhelming. But within the chaos, one thing became clear. The Nexus held knowledge that could reshape the future. And now, Ray was connected to it. The Nerians stood silently, watching him, knowing that from this moment forward, Ray Carter's fate, and theirs, were forever intertwined. The overwhelming flood of images subsided, leaving Ray disoriented but filled with a profound understanding. He staggered back, his hand instinctively reaching for the Nerian leader's arm for support. She steadied him, her touch gentle but firm. Ray blinked rapidly, trying to process what he had just seen. The Nexus was more than just an ancient relic. It was a repository of knowledge, a living database of the universe's secrets. It had been created eons ago by an advanced civilization, one far older than the Nerians or even humanity. The visions had shown Ray glimpses of this long-lost race and their connection to the Nexus. But that wasn't all. The Nexus also contained information about Earth, about humans, details that left Ray breathless. Humanity wasn't just another species in the galaxy. According to the Nexus, they had a unique role to play in the future. Their ingenuity, resilience, and determination were traits that the creators of the Nexus had foreseen as pivotal in the survival of countless civilizations. Ray felt the weight of this revelation settle heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't just a soldier stranded on an alien world anymore. He was now a key figure in a much larger story. The Nerians had brought him here for a reason. They had access to the Nexus for generations, but it required a human's touch to unlock its true potential. The lead Nerian gestured toward the sphere once again, her expression urgent. Ray understood what she was asking. He needed to help them harness the power of the Nexus. The knowledge contained within it could reshape the fate of their planet, and perhaps many others. As Ray moved closer to the sphere, he realized that he wasn't alone in his mission. The Nerians, particularly the leader, had been watching over the Nexus for centuries, waiting for the right moment and the right person to appear. Now that he was here, they could begin their work together. With a deep breath, Ray reached out to the sphere again, this time prepared for the surge of energy. As his hand connected with the pulsating surface, the chamber lit up, brighter than before. The ancient mechanisms around the sphere whirred to life, and a low, melodic hum filled the air. The Nexus was activating. Suddenly, the ground shook, and Ray looked up to see the walls of the chamber shimmering with light. The energy from the Nexus was spreading, flowing outward into the planet itself. Ray felt a deep connection to the planet, as if it were waking up from a long slumber, reacting to the Nexus's power. The Nerians stood back, watching in awe as the chamber transformed before their eyes. For them, this was more than a technological breakthrough. It was a moment of destiny. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. Without warning, a loud, mechanical sound echoed from deep within the structure. Ray's heart raced as he turned toward the entrance, where shadows began to stir. Something else had been activated within the Nexus. Something dangerous. Ray grabbed his knife, ready for a fight. The Nerians tensed, their eyes darting to the shadows. Emerging from the depths of the Nexus was a massive robotic figure, its body sleek and metallic, its eyes glowing with a menacing red light. It had been dormant for centuries, but now the Nexus reactivated. It had awakened. This was the Nexus's guardian, designed to protect its secrets at all costs. Ray cursed under his breath. They had just unleashed a force far beyond their control. The guardian stepped forward, its footsteps shaking the ground, and Ray could feel the threat it posed. They couldn't fight this thing head-on. It was far too powerful. "We need to move," Ray shouted, hoping the Nerians understood his urgency. He gestured for them to retreat, but the lead Nerian hesitated. Her eyes flickered between Ray and the Guardian, as if weighing her options. Ray didn't wait for her decision. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the entrance. The other Nerians followed, their graceful movements now filled with panic as the Guardian's massive form advanced. They bolted through the entrance of the Nexus, the ancient doors slamming shut behind them with a deafening thud. Ray's heart pounded in his chest as they sprinted back down the rocky path they had climbed earlier. The Guardians' mechanical roars echoed from within the Nexus, but for now, they were safe. As they reached a clearing, Ray slowed down, his breaths coming in ragged gasps. The Nerians gathered around him, equally exhausted but alive. For now, the Nexus and its Guardian were behind them, but Ray knew that this wasn't the end. The Nexus had revealed its secrets, but it had also shown them the dangers that came with that knowledge. Ray looked at the lead Nerian, her silver eyes reflecting the light of the setting sun. Together, they had unlocked something powerful, something that could change the future of both their worlds. But they had also awakened a threat that wouldn't rest until the Nexus was protected. Ray took a deep breath, the weight of the responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He wasn't sure what came next, but one thing was clear. His journey with the Nerians was far from over. Together, they would need to find a way to control the Nexus's power, to protect it from those who would misuse it, and to stop the Guardian from destroying everything in its path. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future,